going to introduce the man behind the Jim's group of companies, Mr. Jim Penman. Hi Jim, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for your opportunity today. Please let us know something about your childhood and where you from.
Well, I was born in England. I grew up in Adelaide mainly and then moved to Melbourne later. Father was an engineer. I've been actually doing gardening jobs since the age of 8. My first gardening job was with we were raising money for the Cub Scouts called Bob a Job.
Mm-hmm.
So I knocked on the door of a neighbour across the back and for a job, and he gave me a regular job for 2 shillings, 20 cents, just raking his driveway and so forth. So from that age, I've done it most of the time ever since.
So from the childhood you are doing all this kind of stuff. So you're passionate about gardening or what?
I always liked gardening, like being outside. To me, even today, if I don't spend time outside with grass and trees, it seems like something's missing.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's an important thing, because people often ask me what business I should go into, what pays the most. And I say, that's not really the right question. Start with, what do you like doing?
Mm.
And if you do that, you're more likely to be successful.
I know, yeah. So what you studied, Jim?
At university, I wanted to understand human society. I wanted to understand how civilizations work, why civilizations rise and fall. Started off studying sociology, discovered that was meaningless, and then switched to history.
Mm-hmm.
And then from history, as I did my PhD, I moved into cross-cultural anthropology and then into biology, trying to look for the reason behind cultural patterns.
Okay. So you made in your PhD in history?
Basically within the history department. The problem was it wasn't really history. It was so far beyond outside conventional thinking that it really wrecked any chance of an academic career. Because to be a historian, you have to become an expert in one particular period, and I was interested in why everything happens and how that fits in with biology. So as I said, that's how I ended up at the age of 29 or so, completely unemployable after having spent 10 years studying.
Then you made your history PhD, and what made you to start of this Jim's group?
Well, I was doing it as a student. Right through my student days, I was always gardening and mowing lawns. And I just gradually built up my business. At the time, I bought my first house, which was cheaper in those days to buy a house, from my studies, from my gardening income. And just gradually learnt the business, got better at it. I never had any idea it was going to be a career. And then when I finished my PhD, well, actually, I didn't finish it. I got knocked back the first time. I wanted to continue with my studies, but it needed a lot of money to do what had basically become a biological research project. So I figured to do that, I couldn't do it through academia. I had to make money. So I decided to go into business. And the only business I knew at that stage was mowing lawns. So I started mowing lawns in full time for a living.
So how much you invested in that business?
My original investment in the business was $24. I was at that time, this was in 1982, I was deeply in debt. I had owed about $30,000. I had an old trailer and a brush cutter and mower, which gave up pretty soon afterwards. $24 worth of printing, and just delivered leaflets in letterboxes around near where I lived. That's how I started it. I knew nothing about business really. The thing I had though, which I say to anybody, I really was passionate about my customers. I made a lot of stupid mistakes in my time, but right from the beginning, I've always had this thing, I hate letting people down. It's just an emotional thing.
Yeah.
And I always want to make a job look the best it possibly can. I want to delight my clients. I was one of the first contractors, even when I was a part-time student, I was one of the first contractors to have a brush cutter to do the edges properly, because it always used to bug me that I couldn't get the edges perfect. So I bought a brush cutter, even though it was very expensive in those days, so I could get a better job. And people would say to me, I never knew my lawn could look that good.
Okay.
I can remember people saying that because I was so meticulous and so careful, returning phone calls, turning up on time. This basic stuff that we teach people. And most people who fail in business, especially as franchisees, they do it because they neglect the very simple things like this.
Yeah. So when you're telling about that, when you started with $24 of this lawn mowing business, and by the time you said you are in 30,000 debt. So what was the reason for all the debt at that point of time?
Well, it was sort of an attempt to get a business going, but I was lazy. I just kept on. I'm not a hardworking person. I mean, I had the reputation of being a workaholic, but it's not true actually. I have to discipline myself, and that time I just got very slack. I was going out with this girl, later married, and I was just distracted, and I just wanted to be the big boss and not do a lot of the hard work, and I just put myself into a deeper and deeper financial hole, and I was cheated, but I let myself get cheated. Just stupidity.
Yeah.
That was it. No reason I should have gotten to that position, but I was.
Yeah. But definitely it gives more of a thing you need to work hard. Definitely that made you more made you workaholic from that time, I believe.
I started working hard, yes, and I'm not a person that works hard by nature. I think some people just are really, really hard working, like my daughter who's just studying law at university now. She's just incredibly hard working by nature. I'm not like that. I have to push myself a bit. I have to remind myself. I have to say, okay, come on, you've got to do some work. You've got to get down to it. You've got to do things. I do work obviously quite effectively, but it always takes self-discipline from my point of view.
Yeah, definitely.
But you can't. There's no shortcuts.
Yeah.
People are very keen on easy ways to make a living and how you make a lot of money without trying. And basically, that sort of stuff just sends you broke.
Yeah.
Work is what works, and being prepared to work at the basics of the business to do the simple tasks. Even today, I spend a lot of time doing things like, well, we've got close to 4,000 franchisees. Every single one of them has my number and my email address, and I'll talk to any franchisee who has a problem at any time about anything. Any client that rings the client rings us more than twice with a problem, or more than once with a problem, gets referred to me for me to fix it. So you've got to do the hard yards. You've got to work in the basics of the business. You've got to be prepared to do everything you need to do.
Yeah.
And then gradually, as you get bigger, you get other people to help you with other things. But you've still got to really put your heart and soul into knowing what's going on in the business.
Do you think all these kind of challenges you faced or the troubles you faced made you success at the now where you are now?
Every business has problems. The very idea that a person starts a business and it's always plain sailing. Most of the things I do don't work out. People look at your success and they think, oh, well, he's just done this and it was turned into this incredible business. It wasn't like that at all. Every day of my working life, I ask myself the same question, without any exception, in fact, probably weekends too. How can I do it better? And I keep on trying things, and I keep on trying different people and different programs and everything, and just keep on experimenting. And mostly it doesn't work, but if you keep on trying and you never give up, and you never give up on looking for higher standards, then eventually it just gets better and better. The big thing I find with many people is that they get discouraged. A lot of things go wrong. I mean, I was so broke in the early stages. I was just on the edge for months on end of, I come to the last day of the month and I didn't know I could pay my rent. I've had situations where I couldn't pay the power bill and the phone bill and my tithing. And I always knew to pay the tithing first because then God would look after me. But it's often very, very hard. And you can get very down, and there's times when you can be very, very discouraged, and you just got to. I have a saying from the time I was mowing lawns: put one foot in front of another. So no matter how badly you feel, you don't think about the future too much. You think, okay, what do I need to do now, right now, the next step, And then the next step after that, and the next step, and the next step, and then just keep on working and working and working till the problem writes itself.
Now, Jim's is not just a name, it is a brand. So, what do you think made you to be in this position now?
The biggest thing about me, as I said, I do many things badly. I have very poor people skills. I'm not a great manager. I'm not good with accounts. But I've always had a passion for service. And it's not a logical thing. It's not saying if you give great service, then you'll get more money. It's service matters to me as such, beyond any sensible. I've made a lot of decisions in my life which are actually foolish from a commercial point of view, but I did it because I believed in service. And in the end, they're the ones that always work out the best decisions. Mm-hmm. But so when I was mowing lawns, I always wanted to do better. How can I do it better? How can I improve it? How can I make my customers more and more delighted? Yeah. And then I started building up lawn mowing rounds, and that was accidental at first. I just had to, I wanted to finish my PhD actually, so I wanted to sell some of my clients off. Yeah. And as I was selling a bunch of clients to sort of let myself free, I kept on picking up more and more clients all the time. Yeah. Because of this service thing. And then I sold another business, then another one, and then I figured out I'd make more money from selling lawn mowing rounds than I did from, that I was actually making from mowing lawns myself. Mm-hmm. So I decided to launch into the business of building up and selling lawn mowing rounds, not as a franchise, just as an independent business. And then I came across a really major problem in that I was very bad at selling. I just don't have the temperament for it. I've actually, early on, I tried selling encyclopedias door to door, and I was terrible at it, so I couldn't sell. Yeah. And then I tried all kinds of systems. I even had a guy who used to sell my lawn mowing rounds for me, who he was in the same room as me, selling a lawn mowing round to a potential client, and I pretended to do something else on the computer in the corner. You know, it was stupid, but I just couldn't sell. And then I learned how to sell, and I always felt this particular lesson that I learned in a single second was the most important lesson of my whole business career. Mm-hmm. And it happened because I went to somebody I knew from my church who was in the advertising business. Okay. And he had a very successful business, and I was very overawed by him because he was really successful and I was just a mowing contractor in those days. And then after a short break, he took me into his office, and for half an hour he sat me down talking about talking about the advertising business. Okay. And how to advertise and where to advertise and what sort of message to give and all this kind of stuff that he knew from his very successful career. And at the end of that conversation, he said to me, "Jim, you really don't need an advertising agent. You need to go out and do what I've just described to you." Now, I knew as I walked out of his office that if I ever wanted an advertising agent, I would go straight back to him. Mm-hmm. And as I walked out, I wondered, why do I think that? This guy has told me nothing about his business, nothing about his charges, nothing about his clients. I knew nothing at all about what he did, and yet I knew that if I ever needed an advertising agent, I'd go straight back to him. Mm-hmm. And in fact, years later, when I wanted to do TV advertising, I did exactly that. I wasn't interested in the competitors. I just wanted to use him. And as I was walking back to the car, which was parked some streets away, I was thinking about this, and I thought, what's this guy done? And I realized what he had done is had no other interest but my success and the success of my business. And by doing that, he completely sold me on his business. So I can just remember having this idea. I said, what if I applied the same system to selling lawn mowing rounds? So the next time somebody asked me about buying a lawn mowing business, instead of talking about my business, I said, tell me, do you know what the cut of a lawn mowing round means? A cut is each job done once. So you've got 50 clients worth $40 each, $2,000 cut. And that's how they're all priced. They're always priced in terms of cut. But most people didn't know what that meant, so I explained that to him. And then I started talking about the business. And then as he came to me, I talked more about how to be successful, how to advertise, how to find work, how to look after client, what kind of equipment, everything that I knew, because I knew what to do.
Yeah.
And at the end of the conversation, I would just simply say, I've got some customers in your area. This is them. That's it. That was my sales pitch. And a short while later, somebody actually rang me. He said, I've been offered a business in my area, and I want you to tell me which is the best business, that one or yours. Now, he was asking me for advice on whether to buy my business. So I was trying to give help so he could buy my business, but it had to be genuine.
Yeah.
So I just simply asked him, I said, what sort of business is you looking at? How many customers has he got? The other one. What's the cut value? How far apart are they? How long has he had it for? Why is he leaving? What's he going to do? Just obvious questions that you'd know how to do. And at the end of it, I said, that's a better business. Buy that one.
Yeah.
I got asked the same question 3 times in succession. 3 different people asked me for my advice as to which business to buy. In each case, I told them to buy the other business. I gave the sale away. And in each of these cases, they all bought from me. And from that time that I started that approach, I never had any problem selling lawn mowing grounds ever again. And everybody who bought from me, I would give them fantastic service, advice, help. After they started, I used to invite them for free lunches, all kinds of things. That was great, and I was doing okay. And then a competitor came in, VIP, which was already well established, interstate business, 250 franchisees. I had nothing, a little mowing contracting business. I tried to join up with them and they wouldn't even have me to help them out. So I decided to compete with them. And I went and rated their show at the Franchising Expo and sort of asked all their questions and stuff, and then they figured out who I was and chucked me off the stand. But I felt there was some value in what they did, but I reckoned that I could make a system that would be better for the franchisee, that would give real benefit to the franchisee. And so I launched that after 9 months arguing with lawyers because they wanted to make the contract really give me power, and I wanted my franchisees to have power. I wanted to give them rights that nobody else would give them. And I launched, and somebody asked me at that time, they said, if it really works out, how many franchisees do you expect you might have if it's successful? I think if it really works out, I said, one day I could have 100. As I said, we've got something like 3,700 now. It's just floored me. But the basic idea behind it was exactly the same as when I looked after clients. With clients, my whole aim was to turn my customers into raving fans. I wanted them to be amazed and delighted with everything I did. I took the same approach to my franchisees. I wasn't so much concerned about getting huge numbers. I just wanted every franchisee to be successful. I wanted everyone to be saying, this is fantastic. And I used to sell my lawn mowing grounds, my lawn mowing franchises the way I sold rounds. Everybody who inquired, I put their name. All my franchisees had their name and their phone number, and I give a list to anybody who wanted to buy a business. And so I'd ring my guys and ask them. And they'd ring them and they said, we're looked after well. Jim's great. Gives us great service. It's a very fair system. There's lots of work. He always gives us advice. Meetings are fantastic. So my franchisees sold the franchises for me. And that's the whole principle.
So when you're talking that, when you're giving franchisees, you told that you give all the ownership to the franchisees, isn't it?
Yes, that's the idea.
But
it's got to be successful. If you're a franchisor, your primary client is your franchisee. It's not even the customer out there. Because in practice, we have far more customers that we can cope with. In the last year alone, we've knocked back 129,000 leads. And that's rising all the time. We can't, even though we grow. So the limit to our growth is not clients. And even though we are passionate about clients, our major focus is on franchisee success.
But you never faced any problem when you gave ownership to the franchisees till now?
Well, every franchise system, a franchisee owns their business. Our system is unique in a lot of ways. For example, we don't have any limit on the size that a franchisee can grow. We have franchisees turning over millions of dollars a year, just one franchisee, and they pay the same fees as anybody else. The fees don't go up. We don't restrict them in where they can grow their business and how widely they can do it. We actually give our franchisees the right to change to a different franchisor if they're not happy. Or even a different division if they wish to. We give them the right to vote out their franchisor. There's all kinds of rights and privileges. As a franchisor, I can actually be voted out by my own franchisees. It's to the extent that I run franchisees directly these days.
Perfect. Yeah.
So it's all a case of how you can make my franchisees into raving fans. That's the basic idea.
But do you ever face any challenges during this tenure with working with all the franchisee groups, the same point? What are the challenges you face, while expanding all these franchisees?
A lot of financial problems. I'm the kind of person that if I have like $2 in the bank, I want to spend it on something and start something else. My wife always complains about that. So I'm a mad keen entrepreneur. I'm always pushing the envelope. But a lot of times I've really come very close to running out of money. Sometimes I just can't pay my bills. And that's not a nice feeling. There's those kind of things. And, I find the hardest thing actually to cope with is franchisees failing. That upsets me the most. Franchisees often contact me when they want to get out and they want some advice on how to do it. And talking to them and seeing that they've failed and why is very difficult to cope with.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing to do. As I said, it can be discouraging. Sometimes we push things very hard too. We're always trying to get better standards, so we push our franchisors. That's the people who directly look after the franchisees. Sometimes we push them very, very hard, and sometimes they kick back on that. We had a case a few years back where a number of them really got very upset, and we had to put new systems into place to give them a bit more control of what was the changes we were making. But we're always pushing for higher standards, so people get quite upset at me at times because we've got to do better. I mean, every year our levels of complaints go down as we work on better and better systems, and that's hard on people too, because you're sending out letters and you're challenging people and you're pushing them to do better, and you've got to have that kind of, you want to serve people, but quite often you've got to do it in a way that's going to upset them a bit because you're pushing them to do things they don't necessarily want to do. Like, one of the biggest problems in customer service is returning phone calls. It's amazing. It's one of the hardest things to get people to do consistently. Now, most of our franchises are pretty good, but there's a minority that really aren't very good at that. And we get complaints back and we follow up, and we've got to keep on trying to make that happen.
Yeah.
Every day is a challenge. Every day it makes it interesting, but there's always things happening. There's always things going wrong, and you always want to try and do it better.
Okay, now you got 3,700 franchises. So when you see it's not an easy thing, so how do you manage all these franchises, and what's the plan you actually work on it? Is there any plan?
The key to success is having good people. It's more important than anything. We have within our organisation a leadership structure. There's franchisees who actually do the work in the field. Then we call them franchisors. Some people call them master franchisees, who are people who know the industry very well and look after the franchisees directly and cope with them. And then we also have a role called divisional franchisors. That's people who run divisions. Like mowing is a division, and skip bins and driving school and stuff. Right now, we own a lot of divisions ourselves, but sometimes we have other people. The real key to success is to have good leaders. If you've got a good franchisor and a good divisional, they'll tend to grow the business, and the franchisees will be successful. If they're not giving good support, if they're not giving good leadership, they're not so successful. So that's more than anything. It's the hardest thing is to find quality people, and you've got to find people who have the right heart. It's not a matter of having some degree from some institution. We find qualifications are pretty well useless, except for things like electrical, where you've got to have them, and plumbing. It's somebody who has a love for what they do. As a leader, somebody who enjoys helping other people as much as anything else, who enjoys seeing other people succeed, who really puts their heart and soul into helping people through tough times. It can be very discouraging. That's one thing about business that we try and emphasize, actually, even in our induction training courses. We say it can be discouraging, it can be tough. People can get quite depressed at times if things don't go well. And you've got to have ways of helping people through those kind of dark times, which we've all been through.
So you have seen more success. When you see yourself, did you felt at any point of time very high of yourself? Feeling ego of yourself?
I never feel myself to be successful. I always see where we fail. When a franchisee fails or when a client gets poor service, I always feel it's my responsibility. And I never actually I never sit back and say we're doing well. I just don't believe it. Because until every single franchisee is successful, and making good money, every single client is getting great service, I just can't be satisfied. And that's how I judge myself. It's never numbers, it's never dollars, it's how well do we do our job. Fundamentally, of course, if everything like that happened, we would be extraordinarily successful and we would grow very fast, but it's never the primary goal. I think it's one of the important things about leadership. It's a word that's not very popular in today's business world, but humility. You've got to be prepared to look at what you do and say, what mistakes have I made? And when I've made a mistake, to apologize for it and to change it. And to recognize that you do things wrong, that you can learn from people. I learn a lot from my franchisees. One of the reasons why I like my franchisees to have access to me, it's partly for their sake, or mainly for their sake, of course, but it also helps me to understand what's going wrong. And almost every week I'll get somebody telling me something that say, oh, that's not good. This aspect of the program doesn't work well, or there's something about the system we could improve. So even I might be in the business for 30 years and I have the biggest franchise chain in the country, and somebody's just been in the business a week, and he'll have a suggestion or an idea, or she, and I'll say, what about this? And I say, well, okay, that's not a bad idea. And we change things. And I think people who fail, it's very often, it's not because they're stupid or lazy, it's because they're too stubborn to recognize that they need to change what they need to do. We have a category of franchisees we call leads, which are people basically who don't want to change. When anything goes wrong, it's always their fault. So I always have the emphasis that when something goes wrong in the business, it's always my fault. And what do I need to do to change it different?
So in what kinds of businesses Jim's group is involved till date?
We've actually got about 45 divisions to date. I don't know the exact number, but started off with mowing. It's quite surprising, actually. I mean, it indicates how dumb I am, but it's the first time somebody actually suggested doing a different Jim's business apart from mowing. I said they were a fool. In fact, when I tried to franchise cleaning originally, I did it through a different brand. I called it Sunlight, which didn't work at all. I just gave the guys their money back. And then somebody came to me and they said, I wanted to do Jim's cleaning. And I said, that's not going to work. This is a gardening image here. You know, a man with a beard and a hat, which is me, actually. That's what I used to look like when I was mowing lawns. And they said, well, we think it will work. And I said, no, you're wrong. And they said, well, we're so confident that we'll give it a try ourselves, and we'll actually launch it ourselves, and we'll take the ownership in terms of a fee. So I said, okay, well, have a go. And it worked. It was successful. Somehow this gardening image transferred from mowing to cleaning. And then we went into things like fencing and building maintenance and dog wash. And then people came up with things like computer services and bookkeeping, which is really white collar, very different. And at the first we thought, no, that couldn't possibly. This is a gardening image. It's a manual. But we tried it, and it worked for them too. So mostly people have come to us. There's relatively few divisions we've actually started. And most of the best divisions actually came from people coming to us and saying, we'd like to do gyms. So they're coming from people who are in the outside. And it just keeps on growing. Started with mowing, then cleaning, dog wash, building maintenance, fencing, antennas, test and tag, skip bins, pest control. I don't even know if I could remember them all actually. Recent ones, I think one of the most exciting ones is driving school. We've got some fantastic people. Once again, it's not the industry itself, it's the leadership. It's having the right people. We've got somebody who's starting and they've got 8 franchisees on the go already and they've only just signed in the past couple of weeks. So that's exciting. We're due to start Jim's Kitchens very shortly. Jim's Energy, which is solar panels coming through. The list is endless. I mean, we've got, as I said, probably about 45 divisions. We could have 300 divisions eventually. Who knows what it'll apply to.
So is that your goal? You can say? Is that your goal, Jim's goal, to have 3,300?
No, my goal is that every franchisee is happy and that every customer is happy. That's always my primary goal. You know, if I send an email to you, you'll see at the bottom a little couplet. Our first priority is the welfare of our franchisees. We're also passionate about customer service. We only choose franchisees and franchisors we are convinced will succeed. That's always my goal. But when somebody comes up with a new great idea and they seem like a good person, we say, well, have a go at it. The question is, can people make a good living out of it? Can we give great service to customers? That's your fundamental goal. And I like to grow, but it's never primary. One of the biggest temptations in franchising business is to just take just anybody. Because you think, if I take on an extra franchisee, if I'm not sure about them, then I grow my business. And if they don't work out, then the worst thing that can happen is they fail and go away. You know, right from the beginning, I've always been selective. We're always very rigorous about trying really hard to pick the best people. Now, we don't always succeed, we make mistakes. There are people they just look so great, but they don't work out. They don't have the right attitude to be in business. But as far as we can, we just want to make them succeed. But so, if somebody comes up and they're like a great person with a great business, usually somebody already in that business, then we give them our training, our support, our systems, our software, and we help them to make it work too. And it just works, and that's why it happens. As I said, it's just person after person coming through with an established business saying, we want to be part of this brand. Because the great thing about it is this, what we're looking for is somebody with a new division who has got a good business already. Usually got a few people involved, they're employing a few people, but they really, really want to grow big. The great thing about our brand is that if you put anybody else's brand against our brand, same sized ad, ours will get 4 times the response. Also, we have a very, very high conversion rate. About 3/4 of the people that ring us, who actually we can book in, end up getting the job done. So we've got a very high conversion rate because people. I think one of the mistakes people make in business is they think you compete on price. Well, actually, there are people who are interested only in the cheapest price, but for most people, what they want is quality service. They want people to be reliable, return phone calls, turn up on time, do a great job, be courteous and pleasant to deal with, all those kind of things. Look the part, wear a uniform, give them confidence. They also want the security of knowing that if anything goes wrong, there's a backup. I mean, we had a fence last year that we actually fixed. It cost us $120,000 to fix this fence because it was improperly done by a franchisee, left the system out of business. But if there's anything wrong with any job that our guys do, first of all, the franchisee's got to fix it. If the franchisee can't, or if they've gone, then gyms will fix it. So it's that kind of sense of reliability that we sell, and that works for any industry because that's what people want. They, whether a person pays, $30 or $40 to get their lawns mowed isn't the real question. The question is, are they going to turn up? Are they going to do a great job? Are they going to be reliable? Have they been police checked? Have they got insurance? These kinds of things. People want reliability. They want security. And that's what we provide for them. And it's a great model. It'll work for anything.
So, coming to your personal life, tell us something about your personal life.
All right, my personal life has been very difficult, very rough at times. I've been divorced 3 times. I'm a very difficult man to live with, obviously, because 3 different women couldn't stand it. I've now been married 16 years to the same lady, and we're still on our honeymoon, and it's absolutely wonderful, and I adore her completely.
You might be investing all your time, in Jim's group. Yeah.
I think a woman married to someone like myself needs to understand that kind of focus, and that's difficult. I'm very, very single-minded about what I do, and sometimes unaware of people around me in some ways. And I don't blame anybody for making that decision. It's tough. But I do think that family is the most important thing, and children. I have 10 children, actually, and I love them dearly, and to me, that's more important than anything. People think that making a lot of money makes you happy, and I'm a happy man, but it's got very little to do with money. The first thing is always my family. The first thing I thank God for every morning is my family, my wife and my children. And then a sense of purpose in life, a sense of mission, of something. Your life has some meaning. And my life is very meaningful because actually we personally live very simply. I mean, the only help we have one lady who comes in once a week to do some cleaning. My wife and I both work. Apart from that, we live in a very ordinary middle-class life. The resources that we have basically build up the business, or they're funding the research program, which is continuation of what I did with my PhD. We've got some wonderful ideas about how we can make the world a better place by changing people's character, by helping people to cope with problems like alcohol and drug addiction and so forth, which is a direct outcome of my PhD work. So that to me is my goal and my purpose in living. I think it's, God gives us money as a trust. It's not really for ourselves. We're supposed to use it for some useful purpose, and I think that's what makes for a satisfying life. But the studies show that the amount of money you make has very little impact on your overall happiness, much less than people think. It's much more to do with relationship, community, purpose.
So, may I know how old are you, Jim?
64.
64.
Yes.
So, you're still, I have seen the other day, you're just running. So, where are you getting that kind of fastness and all?
I have a job that I absolutely love, and I have a sense of purpose. I believe there's an enormous amount for me to do. I'm on current life expectancy. I'm probably going to last about another 25 years. That's a long time. I think we can do incredible things. We can change the world for better in that time. I look after myself. I control my diet. I run 5Ks every day. I have a happy family life. All these things are important and valuable.
Yeah. Do you chill out?
Sorry?
Do you chill out? Often.
What do I do to chill out, I guess? I like reading. I like walking. I spend a lot of time with my family. I have a great lifestyle too, because, and this is something that many of our franchisees have too, it's not so much a matter of the income, it's when. Like I might be working early morning, late at night, and I virtually never take holidays. But I'm going to take my kids who are on school holidays, I'm going to take them out for lunch today. And I normally would during the school holidays. And I can take my son to his karate lesson and so forth, which most fathers can't do. So I know my kids very, very well. I have a very strong relationship with them. I think that's my major joy, is just my family. Yeah. I like playing computer games, most of these stupid games which have got no sense at all.
Okay.
But mostly my family.
When I have observed all your businesses, you are giving an opportunity to the new starters. So what kind of happiness you get when you see people getting, a business opportunity from Jim's group? So how do you feel it?
It is very satisfying. One of the happiest, proudest memories I have from my whole career is when I've been able to help an individual person. Just to give you a very small example, That wasn't small to him. A franchisee rings me up going into his first winter and he's doing very poorly. And I figure out from talking to him that he's not upselling to his clients well enough, which is going in and one job like mowing the lawns and then upselling to clear the gutters or whatever.
Yeah.
So I challenged him and I said, you know, I'd like to challenge you that every client that you go to from now on, you will ask for at least one extra. And I said, would you accept the challenge? And he said, yes, I will. And that was in April. And he rang me back in September after the end of the winter. And he said, Jim, do you remember that conversation we had back in April about upselling? And I said, yes, I do. How did it go? And he said, thank you. That conversation saved my business. Now, that wasn't a big thing to me, but that kind of thing sticks in my mind as the ultimate of satisfaction, that you can see people succeed. Everything is about that. If you start caring more about the money than the people, you're off on the wrong track. And I see people do that all the time. Those who care about the money first end up making a lot less than those who care about the people first.
I saw that you wrote some books like Selling is Not Selling. What is that? Selling by Not Selling, or some other couple of books are there. So you also write books, and tell something about those.
Okay. I've written the book actually a long time ago about my business. The latest version is actually called Every Customer a Raving Fan, which is the basic principle behind everything I did, which is the customer, first of all, my mowing customers, and then my franchisees, and more recently our trade exchange, where we arrange exchange between businesses. Mm-hmm. I've also written 2 more academic books about the studies that I did. It's called Biohistory. One's called Biohistory, and the other version is called Biohistory, Decline and Fall of the West.
Okay.
Which is just a completely radical, different understanding about what makes society works. And it's the basis of our scientific research program that we're doing. Mm-hmm. I've also launched an institute called the Institute for Social Neuroscience, mm-hmm. which is just starting to take students as of next month.
Okay.
So we're going to be teaching psychology as well, and that will also be a basis for this research program too.
Where are you finding time?
It's very important to be efficient. One of the things too is that one of my philosophies is you do the things you can do well. If somebody else can do it as well or better than you get them to do it. I'm actually not very good at doing a lot of things. I'm not a particularly great salesperson. I'm not as good at support as many people around me are. So I focus on the things that I can do well, and I try and be very efficient in the way that I handle them. Mm-hmm. Like handling emails very, very quickly and having a good system for getting rid of I respond very fast to inquiries. I make decisions very fast. I'm a very fast thinker. So just efficiency, really. I don't work ridiculous hours, as much as people, as I said, I'm often thought of as being a workaholic, but I'm really not, because my family and stuff is important to me. I also believe in taking time off. I don't like holidays, but I always try and rigorously take my Sabbath off 1 day a week. Yeah. So that, and I think that's an important balance in life, and always get good exercise. You've got to make sure that things like exercise, diet, sleep, break time is done right, because that means if you're psychologically and physically healthy, when you are working, it's more efficient. Yeah. Because in actual fact, especially when you get to a certain stage, 5 minutes of clear thinking can be more valuable than 5 hours of muddied thinking where you don't really know what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And often I just make a decision. I say, we're going to do this, and then I make it happen. And I look back and I think, why on earth did I not do this before? You've just got to have a clear mind about what to do. So it's quality time. It's thinking earnestly about what you're doing. And also, to me, it's very difficult to know when I'm working, when I'm not working. Because, in fact, when I'm talking with somebody just socially, business tends to come into it anyway. Yeah. Even with my wife, where we spend at least half our time talking about business. And when I'm running or something, when I'm thinking, when I'm walking, when I'm doing anything, my mind is always busy. And yet when I'm working, I'm having fun because I have a great job. I was speaking to our guy, our local MP, Tony Smith, the other day, who's he's a Speaker of the House of Representatives, so he's one of the most important men in the country. And I said, Tony, I don't envy your job. I wouldn't swap.
Yeah. So who are your best friends here in Australia or wherever?
My best friends.
Yeah.
My best friend is my wife.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely, by far, and my kids.
Okay.
That's the one. That's who I'm closest to. I have, some wonderful work colleagues. Tino Grossi, who helps me out in the national office, is fantastic, and I've got wonderful staff.
Okay.
I don't even want to start mentioning people. There's so many, and great franchisors too.
Good. Yeah.
There's a franchisor lady called Sharon in the clean division who's just set the whole of Jim's group afire because she's just so wonderful. She's great she loves her franchisees. She gives them fantastic support. She's got a really good success rate, and she's getting incredible growth. And people like that are, I don't know whether you say Sharon was a friend, but they're people who inspire me and motivate me.
Yes.
And I really love her. She's a great lady.
Yeah.
I like people who care about what they do. And I have fun too. I play chess with the guys in the IT department too. The first time we played, actually, I beat them, and they were absolutely narked about that. I was just a freak though, so usually I don't do all that well. But just stuff like that. I have a wonderful life. I really do.
Yeah.
But family and work and church, it's all around those kinds of things rather than anything else.
So before you were telling that you're a fast decision maker. So when you take some decisions very fast, by any chance did that got affected to you in any other way?
Sorry, what was that?
When you took a decision very fast, did that decision make you, one or the other way, did that affected you? The decision what you have taken very fast?
Well, sometimes it can be a mistake. Sometimes I can make a decision so fast that it comes out wrong, and sometimes you need to backtrack on things like that. But often, I think people get in a lot of trouble because they don't make decisions. Sometimes you've just got to say, here's the evidence, bang, 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 bang. Now let's decide on something, because often the worst thing you can do is just to not decide. Not give people an answer and just let it hang. People are always waiting for you. One of the things about our business is that we can move very, very quickly. We can make decisions. If something comes up, I'll usually chat with some of my top people about it. What do they think? What's their advice? So you get a bit of advice, and then you decide, and then you go ahead and you do it. And we are a very, very flexible sort of company because it's basically, myself and a few people can make decisions. We just talk informally and then it's all done. We can arrange to spend, substantial several $100,000 just like that because there's an obvious thing and it's come up and here's the opportunity and let's grab it and let's work through it. Because I think sometimes you can spend weeks or months agonizing over. And sometimes you do make bad decisions, but on the whole, I think it works quite well. Service.
Only service.
Service. Make everybody you deal with into raving fans. That is one guiding light of my entire business career. It's the great secret of my success. Absolutely be focused on service at every level. You focus on service to your customers. In my case, I focus on service to my franchisees. We also look to our suppliers too. Now, I think people don't think of suppliers in the same way. But, for example, we've got an insurance business, and one of the things that we're always focused on is how we can make life better for our underwriters.
Yeah.
By things like, working out ways to reduce risk. Because if you do that, what that means is that you can keep the premiums low because they love dealing with us, because we're great people to deal with. And we make sure we always pay our bills very, very promptly, for example. And we try and make it a good relationship for them either. As well. So when you do that, and I think people ignore that, they think because I'm paying that I'm in control. A A lot of companies, especially big companies, are very rotten to deal with. They delay endlessly with their payments and they screw their suppliers and so forth. And I think that's a very foolish attitude. Everybody you deal with should get something out of it. In fact, if I want to do business with somebody and I have to see how they're going to gain from it. Otherwise, I don't like it. I don't trust it. There's something wrong with it. You can't see somebody's benefit.
Yeah.
That attitude right throughout. And then if you do that, if you focus on service, if you focus on doing what you do very, very well, and then just put a reasonable amount of planning and effort into expansion, but never at the expense of doing the best thing by the people you deal with.
Yeah.
It's a matter of ethics, but it's also a matter of good sense. Because we've seen it again and again. And I keep on saying that I know, but the people who focus on the money first tend to do a lot worse than those who focus on the success of the people they're dealing with first.
I saw the organizing method that you're having here. When I saw whole your departments, you have each department, and you have built a different world here, which is very impressive. So, how much time it took for you to build all this structure?
Again, it's more a case of finding the right people. I mean, we have a wonderful insurance department now, and it's growing. It gives great service. We haven't raised our premiums for 3 years, which is fantastic. Which is great for our franchisees. Not only that though, but we pay our claims very quickly. Often within literally like an hour. We can sometimes pay the claims. Very often next day. I get virtually no complaints from my franchisees about it. Now, that's a great business, but I tell you what, when it started out, it was an absolute shambles. I had 3 different managers, and it was terrible. Yeah. It just took me a while to find the right person in charge, and then Yadrin came along, and he's great. So that applies to anything. In finance we have many problems. We have a Friday lunch, which is just once a week, and they come in, they eat at the conference centre and so forth, and it's just part of something that we do because it gets people to get out of their silos and talk with each other and have a bit of fun, a good time. We're building a sporting complex for the conference centre. Now that's partly for the conference centre, but it's also just as much for the sake of my staff, to give them a better lifestyle, to make them healthier, to make them happier. So my success at every level depends on attracting and keeping quality people at every level. Customers, finding great customers, obviously, looking after them, attracting good franchisees, attracting and keeping good franchisors and divisional franchisors, divisional founders, staff, good relationship with suppliers. All the way through, you look after people properly and have a reasonable sense of the bottom line too. You've got to do that as well, and it works out surprisingly well. And the biggest problem I see in business all the time is people are too money hungry. They don't consider the people they deal with enough, and it costs them badly, and it costs their people badly. We had I don't know if you heard, there was a terrible case some years back where this man drove his 3 little boys into a dam near Geelong, and they drowned. I mean, everybody knows about it. It was appalling. Now, that guy used to be a Jim's Mowing franchisee. Oh. And that to me I tell all my franchisors that. I say, this is how do you know the decisions you make, how they'll impact on people? You've got to care more about the people than anything else. It's optimum. Get to meet with your franchisor, meet with other franchisees, form relationships, form friendship groups. If a franchisee's got a problem, you must respond quickly to them, or take the call, or get back very fast. We're very strong in that sort of thing. So very strong personal support to the franchisees, and obviously from our point of view to the franchisors as well. Yeah. If a problem's gone beyond that, then they're taught to refer people to other resources, like people like Beyond Blue, which we work with pretty intensively, and they're wonderful organisations which can help people through those kinds of hard times. Depression is actually a really, really major problem in today's world. I don't think we have more of it in gyms than elsewhere, because people who tend to buy businesses are usually fairly emotionally healthy, but it is an issue for us, and we're certainly aware of it, and we certainly want to deal with it. One of my franchisors committed suicide the other year, a couple of years back, and it was very hard, because you sort of know these people, and to me that's the worst thing, when somebody takes their own life, because the sense of despair and just that drives into that. And we really want to do everything we can to help people to be successful. And sometimes when people are in a bad way, sometimes the best thing you can do is say, look, a business isn't right for you. Business is wonderful if you're in the great state of mind for it, because it's flexible and it's opportunity for growth and stuff. But sometimes people we try and get them out, find them a buyer, move into something else which is perhaps a bit less challenging. And we're very honest about it too. When we talk about people up front, even during our induction training, the people who haven't actually signed, we tell them that there will be hard times. There will be times of discouragement. Be prepared for that. Now, this is the kind of system we have. This is how we want to help you through it, but be aware it can happen. So be prepared and ask for help when you need it. Don't just shut up about your problems, but let us know. It's a minority, but when it happens, it's quite upsetting. And because of our franchisees, for the most part, genuinely care about their franchisees, they get caught up in that kind of thing too, and that we've got to help them as well to cope with that.
So is Gyms Group is only in Australia and New Zealand, or where?
We're also in Canada and in the UK, but not very big. We've got about 70 in Canada and about 22 in the UK, something like that.
Okay.
So mainly Australia and New Zealand.
So you've got expansion plans?
Well, once again, if the right person came to us, both with New Zealand, with everywhere actually, New Zealand included, it was because people came to us first. I don't actually plan a lot of things. You'd be surprised how little. My focus is always on how can we do it better, and I keep on saying that. I know it sounds crazy, but it is, rather than grandiose plans for expansion, because if you keep on doing things, when I started off gyms, I didn't intend to go interstate. I had no concept of going interstate. It wasn't, I thought of going interstate. People coming to me to said, we want to set up somewhere else. Same thing with new divisions, same thing with different countries. People always mostly come to us, and we just try and do the best job we can for them. But in reality, it's a lot easier to get a new division going in Australia and New Zealand because the brand is so strong.
Yeah.
Whereas over there, it's not very well known, and they're further from support and stuff. Most of our focus is on Australia and New Zealand.
I don't think you have a retirement plan.
Oh, I do. One day I will retire, and there'll be a ceremony, and I'll be the guest of honour, and I'll be in a box on the floor. I don't intend to retire ever. I can't imagine it. To me, retiring would be like becoming blinded or a quadriplegic or something terrible. It would be worse than that.
We wish you will be in a very healthy state, so you can serve more to people, quality service.
People tend to think that success has so much to do with ability. One of the greatest, most overrated things that people can have is intelligence. I don't actually think intelligence has much to do with success as people think. The best people are people not with the greatest minds, but the greatest character. I don't think education relates to success either, very much. I don't see any relationship between education and success, apart from you need to be literate and so forth. It's character that counts all the way along the line. Are you the kind of person that cares about what you do, that you want to do it well, you want to do it better and better, and you cares about the people that you deal with? I'm actually in many ways not a very capable person. There are so many things that I do so badly, and anybody who knows me would tell you that. I have very, very poor people skills, and I often say things and I upset people when I don't mean to, and I have a short temper at times. There's many things that I do very badly. There's many people around who are much better at doing things than I am. I don't believe the kind of attitude that says, I'm not capable enough, I can't do this, is completely wrong. You can do whatever you set your mind to. The real question is, how much do you care? Even that, people talk about Albert Einstein, for example, as an example of somebody's supreme genius. But he didn't think that way at all. He said genius is an infinite capacity for taking pains. In other words, how much effort are you going to put into doing what you want to do? How much of your heart and soul do you put into it? Now, I believe that most people can be successful. Now, possibly not at the nationwide business level, but most people can achieve far more. And what it comes down to is character. Because I never stop trying to do better. I never think I'm good enough. I never think we do well enough. I'm always wanting to succeed. I'm driven by that passion that every day, every hour, every day is how can we do it better? How can we succeed? And I find people to do the things that I'm not good at. And I recognize that. And I let them know too that, you're so much better than I am at doing this particular job, so I'm going to let you get on with it. You've got to trust people too. And sometimes you can be mistaken and get unstuck, but you've got to say to somebody, look, we'll let you make those decisions and do it yourself. And I kind of hold you responsible for the results. I might not agree with what you're doing. Now, sometimes I'm right and what they've done isn't a good idea, but sometimes I'm wrong too, and I let them have their way. So you've got to put trust in people. You've got to believe in people to some extent, and even if you find yourself mistaken. I think it's a mistake to be too cynical about human nature. Yeah. There are a lot of very good people around. You've just got to find them and give them an opportunity, and then work out what they want, and hopefully they'll get some reward out of it, and it's just not just monetary too.
But now you are definitely an inspiration to the new business starters. So what kind of tips you want to give for them if they have to, if they want to start a new business?
Make your customers into raving fans. I say it again and again, but it's the absolute essence of whatever you do. How can you make your customer delighted? Don't think in terms of what you can get out of it. Just think in terms of what will make your customers completely delighted. And the other side of it too, though, and this is something that we do say, don't focus on price. Focus on service rather than price. Don't aim to be the cheapest. Aim to be the best. Because people want quality service. Doesn't mean to say you can be ridiculous. You can't charge 3 times what somebody else does and be successful. But if you're better than other people, you can charge an extra 10, 20%. We tell our franchisees, if you want to know what to charge, work out what the opposite is charging and add 10%. That's what this will give you. And as you do better service, you can somewhat do better. And they do get good money. So focus on quality. Work out what your customer wants. What's going to make them happy? And if you've got any customer who's not happy, completely happy, first of all, figure out how to satisfy them, and then figure out what you did wrong in the first place. Did you not understand what they wanted, for example? Maybe you should listen more carefully. Maybe you should write down what you're prepared to do for them more meticulously so there wouldn't be that kind of mistake. But you learn from your mistakes all the way along the line. And every time something bad happens to you because you made a mistake, then you learn and you don't do it again. Like when I first started doing rubbish removal, I remember one particular job I was doing, there's a pile of branches and leaves and stuff on the driveway. He said, how much? And they gave a price. Now what I hadn't checked was that underneath the branches there was concrete. So I ended up working, whole the day for about $2 per hour, which even in those days wasn't very good money. But from then onwards, whenever I saw a pile of rubbish, I'd put my foot into it and find out what was beneath the surface. That's just a tiny example. And there's thousands and thousands of little mistakes. You do a job, you quote it wrong. You do the job meticulously, you satisfy the client, and you figure out next time, okay, I'm going to charge for that job differently. Make your customers crazy about you, and then the world will beat a path to your door. There is so much benefit with a happy customer. Happy customer means repeat work. Happy customer means extra work from the same customer. Happy customer means referrals. Reputation is everything. And as we move into the age of the internet, where ratings are becoming more important, that's also an extremely valuable resource. The better you can do. We found it very, very obvious within gyms, because we're always looking at why people succeed and why they fail. And we found that our best franchisees in terms of customer service, those who return phone calls instantaneously and every client's raving fan, very rarely poor income. Whereas the franchisees who are a bit less meticulous are much more likely to report poor income. Up to about 25% of our poorest franchisees report poor income, which is by our standards a lot. Virtually none of our top people do, except when they're perhaps just starting off and they're getting going. So focus on service. Focus not so much on where you can make the most money, but where you can have the biggest delight to customers. Do something you love yourself, that you enjoy, and just try and every day try and do that better and better and better. Be more efficient, and above all, a better service to the customer. My biggest goals are to do with my research project. I want to change the world for a better in a fairly big way, and I want to have great kids who grow up to be decent, productive, good human beings, which so far they have. That's my biggest goal. And within business, I want to make things better for people, I suppose. I want to have an impact for the better. I'm not saying everybody benefits. My competitors don't necessarily like me very much, but that's not my business. We're very tribal at gyms. Anything. I don't believe in being dishonest with people who are competitors, but at the same time, we're out there to beat them. And if somebody can't compete with us and they go bust, well, that's their concern. My concern is my own people. Anybody who's in gyms is our tribe.